She walked onto one of the biggest political stages in America, looked into the cameras, and spoke from the heart about her grandfather. She wasn't a politician, she wasn't a celebrity, she was just an 18-year-old girl who loved her family. But by the time she stepped off that stage, the internet had already made up its mind. Kai Trump was someone worth watching, and they were right. Before we dive in, if you're following this story and want updates as they develop, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the notification bell. You don't want to be the last one to know when this story takes its next turn, because trust me, it will. Now, let's set the scene. July 2024, the Republican National Convention is in full swing. Donald Trump has just secured the Republican presidential nomination, and the energy inside that arena is electric. Speakers from across the political world take turns at the podium, making their cases, throwing their support behind the former president. And then a young woman walks up. No political title, no decades of experience, just Kai Trump, granddaughter, speaking honestly about the man her family calls Grandpa. She talked about the side of Donald Trump that most people never see. The private moments, the phone calls, the grandfather who shows up not just for the cameras, but for the people he loves. It was personal, it was sincere, and millions of people felt it. Clips of her speech spread across social media within hours. Comment sections filled up. People weren't just reacting to what she said, they were reacting to how she said it. Calm, composed, confident, and completely authentic. Just like that, Kai Trump went from a relatively private teenager to a name people were actively searching online. What happened next says a lot about who Kai Trump really is, because a lot of people in her position would either shy away from the spotlight or completely lost themselves in it. Kai did neither. Instead, she did something far more calculated and honestly impressive for someone her age. She leaned in, strategically. Sources close to her describe her as someone who truly took advantage of her sudden rise to social media stardom. And that phrase isn't meant to carry any negative weight. It's actually a compliment dressed in honest language, because in today's digital world, fame is a window. It opens fast and it can close just as quickly. The people who understand that, who move with intention while the window is open, are the ones who build something lasting. Kai understood that. She launched her YouTube channel and started creating content that felt genuine, not forced, not polished to the point of being fake. Just her, talking about her life, her interests, her perspective. And people responded. Her subscriber count climbed steadily and then dramatically. By the time the dust settled from the convention and the election cycle, Kai had crossed 1 million YouTube subscribers. 1 million. That's not a number you reach by accident. That's a number you reach when people actually want to watch what you're making. She also diversified. YouTube was one platform, but she was building presence across multiple social media channels simultaneously, understanding, perhaps instinctively, that in the influencer world, you never want to put all your eggs in one basket. A creator who lives on only one platform is always one algorithm change away from irrelevance. Kai wasn't building a moment, she was building a brand. But here's what makes Kai Trump's story genuinely interesting and what separates her from the long list of people who go viral and then vanish. While she was navigating this new life as a social media personality, she never let it become her entire identity. Because at the core of who she is, before the speeches and the subscribers and the spotlight, Kai Trump is a golfer. And not just a casual player who hits the course on weekends, a serious, committed, competitive golfer. Golf has been a significant part of her life for years, shaped in part by growing up in a family where the sport was woven into daily culture. When her family relocated from New York to Florida, Kai was 13 years old at the time. The move brought her closer to the kind of year-round golfing environment where real skill gets built. Florida has long been a hub for competitive youth golf, and it gave Kai the space to develop her game in a way that New York winters simply couldn't. She put in the work, and the work paid off. Kai Trump has committed to play collegiate golf for the University of Miami this fall. Let that sink in for a moment. This is not a celebrity signing up for a fun campus experience. This is a Division I athletic commitment. The University of Miami has a respected golf program, and you don't get invited to play at that level because of your last name or your YouTube channel. You get there because coaches watched you swing, watched you compete, watched you handle pressure, and decided you belonged. That commitment speaks volumes. It tells you that beneath the social media posts and the viral moments, there's a young woman who has been grinding on the golf course long before anyone knew her name. Golf is her anchor. It's the thing that exists independently of her grandfather's presidency, independently of her follower count, and independently of the news cycle. And that matters more than most people realize. Speaking of independence, let's talk about something Kai has been very clear and very public about: politics. specifically the fact that she wants absolutely nothing to do with it. In January 2025, Kai appeared on Logan Paul's widely watched podcast, Impulsive, a platform with a massive, predominantly young audience. It was a smart appearance in itself, putting her in front of a demographic that might not follow political news, but absolutely follows culture and personalities. And during that conversation, she said something that was simple and significant. She stated plainly that she has no interest in ever running for political office, ever. Now, for some people, that might sound like the kind of thing someone says when they're young and haven't thought it through, but those who know Kai say it's the opposite. It's a deliberate and considered position. She's watched closely how politics operates. She's seen how it consumes people, how it defines them, how it follows them, and she's made a clear-eyed decision that it's not the life she wants. And honestly, that declaration is one of the smartest moves she's made, because by drawing that line, she expands her audience. Politics, by its very nature, is divisive. The moment you plant your flag on one side of the political fence, you automatically lose half the room. By stepping away from that arena entirely, Kai keeps her audience wider. She becomes someone that people from across the political spectrum can enjoy, follow, and connect with, because she's not asking them to agree with her politically. She's just asking them to come along for the ride. Now, it would be dishonest to tell this story without addressing the elephant in the room, or more accurately, the presidency in the room. Political observers and media analysts have pointed out something that deserves serious consideration. A significant portion of Kai Trump's fame is tied directly to who her grandfather is. That's not an insult, it's just reality. The speech that launched her into the spotlight happened because Donald Trump was running for president. The media attention that followed was amplified by the election. The curiosity surrounding her family is fueled, in part, by the political moment the country is living through. Which means there's a very real question worth asking. What happens when the presidency ends? When the political cycle shifts? When Donald Trump is no longer a daily fixture of national conversation? Sources with insight into political media landscapes warn that for figures like Kai, the timeline of their fame is, at least in part, tied to the timeline of an administration. It's not a guaranteed death sentence for a public career. Plenty of people who entered public life through political proximity have gone on to build lasting independent brands. But it does mean the clock is ticking in a way that isn't true for someone who became famous through purely cultural or creative means. This is exactly why the golf commitment is so important. The YouTube channel is important. The multi-platform presence is important. These aren't just hobbies or fun side projects. They're foundations, things Kai is building that belong entirely to her, separate from her grandfather's legacy, that will still be there long after the political chapter of this moment in history has closed. There's one more element of Kai Trump's story that keeps coming up in conversations about her trajectory, and it's worth pausing on because it's genuinely insightful. The people around her, those who observe her closely and speak about her publicly, frequently comment on her maturity, and they often attribute that maturity to one specific factor: the timing of when she became famous. Think about what we know about child stars and young people who grow up in the public eye from an early age. The list of cautionary tales is long and well documented. The pressures of constant public scrutiny, the distorted sense of reality that comes from having your every move observed and commented on, the difficulty of developing a normal sense of self when the world has already decided who you are before you've had the chance to figure it out yourself. These are real and serious challenges, and many young people who face them haven't come out unscathed. Kai Trump's situation is different. She was already 18 when she stepped onto that RNC stage. She had spent her teenage years largely out of the spotlight, developing interests, building skills, forming a sense of who she is on her own terms. The golf, the schoolwork, the normal, or as normal as it can be given her family, adolescent experience. By the time fame arrived, she had enough of herself already built to not get swept away by it. She could look at the sudden surge of attention and make choices about it, rather than being defined by it before she even had a choice. That foundation, built quietly over years before anyone was watching, is arguably her greatest asset. So, where does all of this leave us? Kai Trump is 18 years old, has over 1 million YouTube subscribers, is heading to the University of Miami to play collegiate golf, and has made it crystal clear that politics will never be her path. She entered public life at one of the most high-profile moments imaginable, and instead of collapsing under the weight of it or riding it recklessly into the ground, she's building something with intention. The story here isn't really about a president's granddaughter going viral. The deeper story is about what someone does with a moment they didn't entirely plan for, and whether they have the self-awareness and the work ethic to turn a sudden spotlight into something sustainable. Kai, at least for now, appears to be answering that question correctly. She has a genuine passion that gives her credibility beyond her family name. She has a platform she's growing strategically across multiple channels. She's drawn clear boundaries around her identity, refusing to let politics swallow her whole. And she entered the public eye late enough in her adolescence that she had the tools to handle it without losing herself in the process. Whether her story continues to grow, or whether the fading of a political era takes some of the wind out of her sails, that's still being written. But what's clear right now is that Kai Trump is not simply coasting on a famous last name. She's working, she's planning, and she's playing, on the golf course and in the larger game of building a public life on her own terms. That's the kind of story worth watching. And something tells us this is only the beginning.